Hello, and welcome to this short webinar on stress and resilience taken from our Healthy Living, Healthy Minds programme, which looks at trying to improve people's lifestyle to improve their mental health and well-being. So stress is something that affects every one of us throughout our lives, and so it's really important to learn how to become more resilient, and self-care is one of those aspects that we can look at to improve that. It might be helpful to take some notes as you go, or feel free to take some screenshots of the slides as well. So the aims and objectives of the session are to understand what stress is and how it affects us, to identify a range of strategies to reduce stress by becoming more resilient, and to understand where to go for additional support. So, first of all, what actually is stress? Stress is our body's response to pressures from a situation or a life event. Now, one of the main reasons that people experience stress is due to not being able to manage pressures from all different aspects of our life and allowing a fight or flight response to kick in when it doesn't necessarily need to. Now, by that, I mean it could be focusing too much on one thing, so you're fighting that situation, or not enough on other things, so running away from those situations. So this could be a family relationship or a friendship that's being neglected or breaking down, or maybe focusing too much on work and not getting a good work-life balance, or neglecting other areas like exercise, diet, or sleep, etc. So why do we actually have a stress response? Now, when you feel threatened, your nervous system responds by releasing a flood of stress hormones. So that's things like adrenaline, cortisol, etc. And these rouse the body for emergency action. So your heart pounds faster, your muscles get tighter, your blood pressure goes up, your breath speeds up, and your senses become sharper as well. Now, this is a natural hormonal response that our bodies automatically do, and this is due to evolution and caveman days. So the fight or flight response comes from there. So if you imagine back in caveman days, things like a lion coming to attack you would be a stressful situation. That's quite a common thing that might happen back in those days. And so that stress response allows us to either fight the situation or run away from that situation so that we get out of danger and away from that lion. Now, as soon as that danger subsides, those stress hormones reduce, they come back down, and then we feel less stressed, essentially. Now, with things happening nowadays, it could be big life events like weddings, birth of a baby, changing job, and things like that. We also get a stress response, as well as daily hassles as well, like traffic and things like that. So all of these things can trigger that physical and mental stress response in the body as our response to try and deal with those particular situations. And often when we are stressed, it's because we have neglected to look after ourselves and our needs. So things are building up, and we have lots of things to deal with. And if we don't deal with those things, then essentially it's like that last bit of string that's holding the rope together. And what can happen is you've got lots of different things happening. So maybe one day you've got some workload stress, and that's quite common. And maybe on your way to work, you were affected by heavy traffic and you were late as well, which caused you a bit more stress. And then maybe you have an argument or a disagreement with somebody, and then maybe some things are going on, you've got some issues with childcare, and then eventually something else may happen, and it's just like the straw that broke the camel's back. It's that last thing, and you suddenly feel very, very overwhelmed. Now, that's very common with daily hassles. If you have lots of daily hassles going on, adding more and more things to your plate can increase that stress response. Now, these things happen very, very commonly, and so you might actually find that you are at a moderate to low level of stress all the time because of these daily hassles. Now, you've also got major life events, and these are typically things that happen every now and again, like a wedding or, like changing job, and it doesn't happen every single day, and they are quite major and they do affect your life. Now, these things can also be stressful, and those events can also be positive and they can also be negative as well. So it's looking at how we can become more resilient to deal with major life events, but also those daily hassles. And it's really, really important to address these because stress can affect us in the long term. And it can affect our mental health, can actually cause digestive problems as well. And the reason for that is because during the fight or flight response, what happens is your blood rushes to your muscles to be able to get into action, to be able to run away from that lion, for example, or to fight it. And so what happens then is because the blood's rushing to your muscles, you've got less blood in your digestive system, which can cause digestive problems. And so the research does also tell us that there are links to issues like IBS and stress as well, because it affects our digestive system. You can also get headaches, fatigue, can lead to things like heart disease, sleep problems in the short and the long term, weight gain and chronic pain as well. So it's really, really important to address stress that we are experiencing. Now, it's just a very quick question. You can answer this question for yourself right now, or you can write it down and come back to it towards the end of this presentation. So I'd like you to think about what causes you the most stress. And feel free to write it down now if you want to. And then what do you do to cope with that stress, if anything? And now it's really important to identify this, because as we go through this presentation, it might be that some of the coping strategies that we offer can help you to deal with that particular stressor. Now, we also have something called the stress curve. Now, this is where we've got pressure in life, and pressure in life is unavoidable. Too little pressure can cause boredom and low performance in whatever you are doing. And that's not necessarily related to work. That could be things like if you're going out to do some exercise, or if you're going out to do an event with the family, you're traveling somewhere, how you cope with that particular event or activity that you are doing can also count as performance. So if there's too little pressure, you can be bored. And you've probably experienced that before at points. Now, if we put a little bit more pressure on, we might get a little bit more comfortable. Now, at this point, you can have more satisfaction with the activities that you are doing. You're doing well, you're not bored, but again, you're not feeling any strain either. You're kind of in that nice, comfortable zone, and you're moving forward at a nice, comfortable pace. Now, if we add more pressure, we then get to the stretch area of this curve, and you can literally feel like you are stretched. You have a lot of things on your plate, but it's not quite into strain just yet. We're just a little bit stretched. We're still coping. If you add more pressure to that, you get to strain, and even more pressure to that, that's when you get panic and your performance drops down completely. Now, strain and panic is the point where you essentially stop doing the things that you do to look after yourself, or even things that are essential in your life or at work. You stop doing those things and your performance drops. So you do less of the things that you need to do, and that actually can cause more stress because you're now worrying about those things that you haven't done or been able to do either. So I'd just like to ask the question, where on the stress curve are you today? If you're at border, is there anything you can add to try and bring yourself up to the comfort or the stretch zone? If you're at the strain or the panic zone, what can you do to try and bring yourself back to comfort or stretch? So ideally, you want to be aiming to be somewhere between comfort and stretch, and then you want to try and bring yourself back there or bring yourself forward to get to that position. So it's just something to think about and take away. So what actually is resilience? This is the capacity to recover quickly from those difficulties, and people recover at different speeds and have different coping mechanisms. So we're going to look at how we can become more resilient. So first of all, we want to create a sense of purpose, and this is to develop your passion for living and have that reason why you do the things that you do every day. You also want to look after yourself and appreciate your strengths and build some positive self-esteem. Connections. Now, this is social connections, so having good relationships with family, friends, work connections, or even just connections within your community. Body, so prioritize your physical well-being and build a healthy lifestyle. So that's things like eating the right things, being active and things like that, and doing fun activities. And also mind, so try and cultivate a positive mindset. So learn how to get more enjoyment from life and live more in the present. And then at that point, you want to try and set yourself some goals, and having clear goals for what you want to do or what you want to learn or what you want to achieve is key to taking some action. And that actually gives you that purpose as well. It gives you a reason for doing those things. Now, to become more resilient, these are some things that resilient people do. So first of all, they accept that bad things do happen to everybody, unfortunately. And some of these things are completely out of our control. And COVID is a very, very good example of that. This has happened, it's been going on for a while. And yes, a lot of it is out of our control, unfortunately. So resilient people do accept that bad things happen to everybody, and no human is immune from this. Now, quite commonly, you might see on social media that people have really good lives and you see all the positives, but typically they don't show the negatives. And so it might look from an outsider's perspective that other people have good lives and had less bad things happen to them, and it might feel like you've got more bad things happening to you, but bad things do happen to everybody. Next, we've got focus on what you can control. So resilient people are good at listening to where they need to focus their attention. So we are good at noticing things, but quite commonly we tend to stick to those negative emotions a bit more and we focus on them a bit more. So for example, if somebody gives you, within a day, you speak to lots of different people and you get 5 different compliments. And they're great, and that's nice, and that's really, really positive, and it can brighten your mood. But then you get one negative comment, and typically that negative comment will stick to you more than those positive comments that you've had previously in that day. Now, focusing on the negative can be beneficial because it can allow us to make some changes. However, this is only the case when we take some action to make those improvements. If we don't take those action, we just keep thinking about those negative things, and it can lower our mood and it can make us feel more anxious as well. So the problem in modern life is that we're constantly bombarded with tasks and challenges, and so our stress response is dialed up. Some things we can control and some things we can't. So try to focus on the things that you can control. Next, try and tune into the good. So what are you grateful for today? Do you have some good connections around you? Do you have some good friends and family? Do you have a good job? Are you grateful for the food that you eat or the activities or the exercise that you are doing or anything else in your life? Think about what you are grateful for and start writing it down. Now, there is actually research that backs this up. So there was a 6-month study that was completed on gratefulness, and this is where we had 3 different groups of people. And they were all asked to keep a daily gratitude journal. So they would spend 2 minutes at the end of each day writing down what they were grateful for in that day. And it was something as simple like, oh, I had a really lovely coffee morning, for example, or I really enjoyed the new recipe that I made today, things like that. So the small things which we don't often think about. And this can really positively affect people's mental well-being, and the evidence is shown in this study. So of these 3 groups of people, one group had depression, one group had chronic pain, and the other group were a control group. So these were average people who didn't report any particular issues with pain or depression, for example. Now, what happened after 6 months of doing this was the people with chronic pain, their pain actually improved after 6 months just by focusing on what they were grateful for. The people with depression also reported improved symptoms of depression as well. And even the control group also reported feeling happier. So this is something very, very simple that you can actually do yourself. So you could get a little notebook or you could download an app, and all you can do is at the end of the day, write down for 2 minutes what you were grateful for in that day. And it can positively affect your mood and help you look after your self-care. Now also think about your thoughts. Are your thoughts or your behaviours helping you, or are they harming you? And it's good to reflect on those thoughts. So thinking, okay, is what I'm doing right now or today or this week helping me or harming me? And reflecting on this puts you back in the driving seat and back in control of your decision making. So you could think, for example, oh, I feel too tired today to go for a run. Is there something else I could do instead? Rather than thinking, oh yeah, no, I'll just give up, there's no point. So thinking, okay, what is the alternative here? Could I maybe go for a walk instead because I'm a bit tired, don't want to go for a run, but I should really be doing something. So it's turning that into a positive. Or it's saying something like, do I need an extra glass of wine? Or can I distract myself and do something else? So instead of having those thoughts and accepting them and carrying them out, resilient people will challenge their own thoughts. And this can lead to different ways of thinking and reacting to a situation. And this can lead to better outcomes as well, so that you feel better and you feel more resilient to those stresses. Now, work-life balance is also really important. So managing stress is important. And by doing so, we want to make sure that we have a good balance, so that you separate your work and you separate your life and you have things in both, and that they don't kind of extend over each other. So you don't want to be thinking about work too much in your personal life when you're having fun. You want to have some nice activities that you look forward to outside of work, but also just making sure that you set those boundaries with yourself. So if you work from home, for example, setting a boundary to say, this is the finish of work, you go into a different room, you do something completely different and take your mind off what you've been doing at work. Small investments do count. So there are lots of different things that you can do. And even something as small as spending 2 minutes at the end of your day thinking about what you're grateful for, that might sound like quite a small thing to do. And then maybe you think, oh, actually, is that really going to have an impact on my life? But the small investments do count, and for many reasons. So everything adds up. So say you do something really small, like you set 10 minutes aside each day to spend some time for yourself relaxing. Now, that might sound like a small thing, but maybe that helps you feel 5% better. And then you decide, okay, instead of giving up on that run, I'll just go for a quick walk instead. Again, that's still better, and maybe you do feel 5% better again. So now on 10%. And then maybe you have a really nice meal and you feel refreshed and not too sluggish. You had something nice and healthy. Again, you then feel 5% better. And all of these things do add up. So as well with these small investments is they don't take too much time out of your day. So if you think, oh, it's only 5 minutes, but 5 minutes isn't much time. So it's not like you're trying to set an hour or 2 hours aside each day to focus. You're just doing 5 minutes here and there, and all of these things really do add up. Now, there are 168 hours in the week. So for example, say you work 40 hours per week, and if you sleep 8 hours per night, that then leaves 72 hours for other things. Now, of course, there are other things like getting the kids ready for school, traveling to and from work and things like that, and they are essential. And of course, they do add up in your week. But the key here with this is whenever we do a calculation with someone of all the essential things they need to do in their week, there is always a little bit of time left, at least. Now, it's up to you what you fill this time with. So everything that you do is your choice, and you might have a lot of things on your plate, but it's how you prioritize that time and think what is important to you. And unfortunately, when we get stressed, some of those things like eating well and exercising go lower down on the priority list. But in fact, it's up to us how we choose to do what we choose to do in our day and what is our priority. And to take care of yourself and have good self-care, it is prioritizing things to look after yourself as well as other activities you need to do. Now, worrying is understandable, but it's not always useful and it can make us feel more distressed. So it's in an ongoing emergency situation, it is hard to predict how things will develop and circumstances can change very quickly. Now, worrying about what might happen is understandable, but it's not useful. And it can make us feel more distressed, as just said. So we need to try and accept that negative emotions do happen. And you might not be able to control the situation or those emotions in the situation, but you can control how you respond to it. Now, you can have a positive response, you can have a negative response, and that's entirely up to you how you have that response. But do focus on what you can do and not on the things that you can't do. Then create a bit of a structure and a routine. Now, something else that might work for you is to write this down. And what can be helpful for people is to write down a list of all the things that are necessary that they need to do on that day or on that week. Maybe it's cleaning the house or paying bills, for example. And then you also want to write down what things are routine. That might be like doing the food shop, for example, and also writing down things that are pleasurable. This could be yoga, it could be taking a bath or something else that you do for yourself. Now, having these 3 categories of routine activities, necessary activities, and pleasurable, you can then categorize those. Now, it's important to complete some of the necessary things, but it is also as important to complete some pleasurable things and not to leave those to the side. Now, something else that you can also do here is if you're having a particularly bad day, you can label these activities as whether they are easy to complete, medium or moderate, or hard. And then on those harder days, pick the easier activities. And then on the good days, pick the activities that are a bit more kind of moderate to hard to complete. And you'll get some satisfaction in ticking these activities off, but also you'll feel less stress and you'll be more resilient because you are getting things done and you have less things to worry about. Now, be here now. So mindfulness. There's a lot of research which indicates that practicing mindfulness technique can help you feel more relaxed. This can be something as simple as listening to a relaxing recording, spending a minute just to focus on your breathing, or focusing on your surroundings with a purpose. If you add in distraction from your thoughts and worries, then that's okay. Just try and refocus. And it's about that practice. It's not about getting it right the first time. Now, maybe it's that you find an activity or a hobby that you really have to focus on and concentrate on, and you really enjoy it. That can help you distract from other thoughts as well that are unwelcome. So mindfulness, is really, really positive, and there's a lot of research about it, but there's still work that needs to be done, and so people kind of fully understand the benefits and how to do it, because if you practice it once, it might work, but it also might not, and it might need a bit more practice. And so people kind of get disheartened if they try it once and it didn't work. So leading a resilient life goes hand in hand with the practice of mindfulness. Now, this isn't the typical sitting down in a corner and meditating with some nice, scents in the room and some nice lighting and things like that. So as an example, say you've got somebody who's got a hobby like surfing the waves. Okay. Now, if you go out surfing, because you've got waves crashing into you every 10 seconds or so, you need to concentrate on the next wave and what's coming up to avoid getting wiped out and spun around like a washing machine in the water. Now, because you've got to focus so much on that, it helps you kind of relax from other things going on in your life, and you're not worrying about other things going on. You're just focusing on what you need to do in that moment so that you don't get splashed by the waves, essentially. So that's just one example where you're using a hobby as a mindfulness tool. And quite commonly, people don't think of their hobbies as a form of mindfulness. That's just what we call it. But essentially, it's paying attention to what you are doing as you are doing it. So say, for example, you take a dog for a walk in the morning before you go to work. Quite commonly, that person will be thinking about what they need to do in their day. They'll be thinking about, oh, I've got this appointment, or I've got this task to do, etc., etc. Now, the dog will be going for that walk with you, and the dog will be thinking about, oh, what can I smell? What can I see? What can I hear? And it'll be focusing on those activities and really enjoying that walk and focusing on that walk. So the dog naturally will be being mindful of what they are doing, whereas the human is quite commonly distracted and thinking about other things. So try and bring your attention to that activity that you are doing and focus on it. And that is essentially mindfulness, and we can do that every single day. It doesn't just have to be a specific technique like meditation. So just want to finish off with a few resources that you can have a look at. So you can do a Google search and just look for the NHS recommended apps page. And there are some apps on there such as Feeling Good, My Positive Self, Stress and Anxiety Companion, or Thrive. And those are NHS backed. Of course, there are other apps like Headspace, Calm, or any others at all that you can just have a look that might be free to download as well. And just find something that works for you. And a lot of these apps can guide you into various different techniques that you can try. And one size doesn't fit all. So it's a case of trying something. If that doesn't work, try something else. There's also further information you can find on mind.org.uk, nhs.co.uk, and again, the NHS apps library is on screen now as well. Now you can either pause this presentation, take a screenshot, or write these down, or even just a Google search will bring you up the right kind of information. So I'd just like to finish off by asking you, what can you do today? What can you do today to improve your resilience to stress? How can you improve your self-care starting from today? It might be useful to write some goals down with yourself, or write down one of the coping strategies that you can try and do. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you got something from that.